Good evening. You are listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you from the Pinos Palace just west of Orlando, Florida, in the Extreme Movie Show studios. I atop that hill of about 5 to 10 acres where Max and Daisy, my German Shepherd, Czechoslovakian red, short-haired, patrol the grounds, keeping us safe. I have some pristine land here, already being here from the great Midwest. It's about 85 today here in Central Florida. It's a very Florida man-ish kind of day for reasons I won't get into. Um, but the day's not over, and it's important because tonight's movie is from 87 to 88. Well, I can't even get the exact right date on
84,
this. Who
1984.
knows when it's released, when it was made, shot? I don't know. It's called Rotor, and this is obviously a bad movie. Not bad in a good way, not bad in a bad way. It's just
Oh, it's
so abhorrently odd that I don't know how to proceed other than I will say this for my initial thoughts. And then I'm going to hand it to you to kind of describe it and set the scene before we talk about whatever comes up. This movie is one of those really bad that riff tracks or MST3K would cover.
they
And we
did.
generally try to avoid those. I do anyway. It's intentional, right? But
Yeah.
sometimes there's crossover. I know this movie, and I've seen this movie probably more than once. However, growing up as a teenager in the 80s, I have absolutely zero recollection of it playing with any other movie. It's not like it was Ninja and Break-In or something coming out at the same time, which is, by the way, a killer double bill. I have no idea that where I've seen it, who I saw it with. Um, it's as if my brain is, been reprogrammed in such a way where I don't remember it, but I have seen it. And this is not a movie I would sit down and watch, even on the rest in peace, that wonderful last great video channel out there, Chiller. El Rey maybe, but El Rey's too sophisticated for a movie like this. I don't know what to make of this film, Rotor. So I want to leave it up to you to kind of guide us here at the beginning before we give it the extreme treatment, because this is definitely an extreme movie, no doubt about it.
Yes, this is extremely bad, but extremely fun too. Uh, this is Cullen Blaine's movie. He directed
Ooh, sorry.
Cullen Blaine. Yes. Sadly, he R.I.P. died back in 2020. It's kind of old. He's 85 years old. So this is the guy who normally does like cartoon shows. He worked on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles later on, '88, and then he worked on like Sonic the Hedgehog and the Get Along Gang in the same year as this. This is 1987. This is Rotor. This is one of your famously bad movies, but basically you got Richard Guest one in here, who is like the poor man's Charlton Heston, sir.
That's true. That's a way of describing it.
Yes, he is in charge of. He's basically in charge of this future program they're going to do with basically, because it's 1987. They imagine like RoboCop. And as remember RoboCop came out.
Yep.
This is the holy crap. This is a bad version of RoboCop, except that this, instead of having a police officer die and put his brain inside a robot, they were building a robot. They said in the next 25 years, it's going to be crime. So basically, they want him to be Judge Dredd, jury and
it's Dredd, Terminator, and RoboCop all mixed together.
Oh my gosh, it is. This is a 2.7 out of 10 IMDb, and should be that way because if you're gonna watch this movie, watch it with a friend. Or if you're gonna watch it alone, like I did, I watched it the riff tracks because I knew this is the riff tracks movie. It wouldn't feel right without it. But I still got it. Just everything in this movie is just so bad. It's a joke. Literally, you feel like the character who gets shot at the end. it is like, so the movie starts off and you're okay, like what's going on here? Like, you see this guy, he's waking up, he's gonna have his coffee, he gets up and then he picks up a cup, he's on a ranch, he's got a horse, goes up the horse, he's like, here, horse, you want some of my coffee? Sure. Gets in his I guess his Jeep, whatever, or whatever, I can't remember what it's supposed to be, Cherokee or whatever. Anyway, gets in, drives to his work, he's going to some research lab. Some guy calls him on the phone, tells him, you have 60 days to complete this project, otherwise you're fired. And he's like, well, screw you, I don't need this job, I quit. So he leaves. So they were basically wanting to build a robot, a police officer. It's called R.O.T.O.R, Robot Officer Tactical Operation Research, which really the last part kind of like changed in the middle of the movie. Like they called it something else. Yeah, it was just so bad. So what happens is that this guy quits. It goes like his girlfriend. They have lunch. 20 minutes later, you see them in another scene together, and they're having dinner. It's like you just ate. It is horribly bad. But anyway, so the main plot is that the robot accidentally gets brought to life 25 years early. But he's not fully functioned as far as capable of thought or reason. You can't. He's the Terminator, and
This beast is not human.
He
You
is
cannot
the
reason with
motorcycle
it.
cop. He's basically the motorcycle cop from Terminator 2.
Yeah.
And the first person he comes across is this a guy and his wife, or newlywed, or engaged, and it's 1984. So he's like, she wants to get a job after married. He's like, I'm not having it. You're embarrassing me, because he's a sexist pig. And he's like, I'm just like, man, this guy, the and I'm gonna say the stereotypical roles they have in here are so bad, where not even the humans are like humans in this movie. It is so weird.
Let me touch upon that for a minute, because you're rolling here, and the one thing up to this point that's really apparent, and we're talking about a third in the movie already, is it's a very 80ish kind of film, in that the chicks are kind of hot with that big hair, the guys are kind of doofy looking. You do have the sex roles here. You've got a little touch of the Miami Vice bit, where you're going to have like these jackets and you're not wearing a tie but a shirt underneath or whatever, the sports casual kind of look. Don Johnson, thank you, Don Johnson, for popularizing that. Not just the colors, but the style. That was acceptable to do that. But the main blonde dude in here, right?
Yes.
I'm like, first of all, he wears those like sniper glasses, which are really cool, and you don't see him as much anymore as you did back in the 80s. Chuck Norris wore them a lot too. But he's got that weird pseudo feathered, really good but really bad hairstyle, and that's just, this movie is so 80s this way. Not just the sex roles that you're talking about, where they really blatantly do all that, because you still saw that in films, but just the fact that you got the one guy and they got the close-up shot of him and he's arguing about the project on the phone, because again, we didn't have cell phones back then like we do today. And then the other guy, they cut to him and he's on it, and then and I have to cross reference this with John Carpenter, because obviously I'm a mark for the guy. Mm-hmm. There's a shot that I think is really, really wonderful. Dean Cundy, I believe, did it in The Fog, where you see him driving. Actually, no, let me take this back. It's The Fog or Halloween 3: Season of the Witch, where the car is driving and it's like, Pacific Coast Highway. It's by itself and the music's playing, and it just goes on, and it's a nice little long shot. It's that still camera with the car moving. It's the California coast. Like, it's so beautiful. But I always remember as a kid watching these John Carpenter movies going, okay, that was a really fucking long shot. Why the hell's in it? Here, this movie, you got the guy, they show him driving to work, like you said, but they take like 2 minutes to do it. Nothing happens. It's not like, hey, let me turn the radio on so some subplot will come on there while I'm driving, that old bit in movies. This movie has all this shit that you could find in the 80s. And don't forget, at the beginning with the kids, when one gets hit or whatever like that, the fog machines are rolling, and everybody knows I'm a big fan of fog machines. If you listen to our Dark Shadows cast here on the Xtreme movie show, our Xtreme TV version, we just finished that. We're in the Wayward Pines. Wayward Pines, some fog machines, not like Dark Shadows from the 80s. Fog machines are just awesome. They add to this movie. This movie spared no expense to make it an 80s film. I have to give it credit for that.
Oh, yes. Especially the presentation room when they show the robot, and he's just kind of dancing around, just like, I'm like, and it's like, so it's like, don't worry, like, it's like, this robot, we don't need the gears or the tubes and stuff, and it's like, to make a move. I'm like, I'm like, you might want to get rid of the tubes that are attached to the robot design. That's animation there. And the reason I bring up Cullen Blank as the director, this is the only movie I ever directed. He went on to work on Garfield and Friends, and this basically went to art animation stuff. Yeah. He was on 90s stuff. He was working all the cartoons, man. He was on everything. Hong Kong Phooey, After School Specials.
Hong Kong Phooey, there you go.
Yeah. Scooby-Doo Dynamite Hour. There in the 70s, he worked on 21 episodes of that. Plastic Man, which was a cartoon series for one episode. I think it was Flintstones, everything. Spider-Man, His Amazing Friends, Gary Coleman Show, Laverne and Shirley, just all the animated stuff. He was involved in everything, tons. You look at him art, it's like, holy crap, he did like all the way up to Timon and Pumbaa, Hey Arnold. Like the last thing he did was Higgly Town Heroes, but before that was like Arthur's Missing Pal, Arthur the Aardvark, and always like PBS, and Crypto Superdog. Like, this guy was on everything. Grandma got run over the reindeer. He did all. He was a storyboard artist. He did all this stuff. Like, so it's so weird to see, like, this is the guy who did R.O.T.O.R. Okay, but I gotta say though, this movie just made me chuckle every time everything's going on. She's like, so finally, so we come across, Sonia or Sonny, whatever you call her.
Breathe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the late actress Margaret Trake, who
Yeah.
died in 2003 of amphetamine abuse, sadly. So she and her new fiance get pulled over by the cop, by the rotor. He goes to tries to bribe the cop. The rotor shoots him in the head.
Yeah.
She freaks out. She's in the
This
car.
is funny.
She honks the horn, and
You're
apparently the
going off my
horn
favorite
is what
scene.
disables this robot from moving out. It's in so much pain receptors, and nobody figures this out except for her, and she remembers at the very end of the movie.
Right.
But I love so basically she drives away, and R.O.T.O.R is so advanced that he can see what happened in the past 30 seconds. He just by looking at the ground and like, oh, that's where she drove. That's where she ran. That's what this guy had for breakfast.
Yeah.
he had perfect memory vision, like you look in the past, time travel of memory. I was like, what the heck? So he follows her going around, and then finally, the main guy, Richard Guessman, or we call that's the actors, but his name is Cold Iron in this. He's like, I know. He's like, he's calling over to CB radio because he's like, yeah, because everybody had CB radios back in 1984 in their car. He's like, I need you to keep driving for the distract him for 10 more hours. I'm like, she's not gonna have that much gas in 10 hours. We have no idea if she has a full tank of gas at this point, or if she's like on fumes. But he's like, hold up, I need to. So then, like, the next thing we see are like, he leaves a message for this Dr. Steele, and just powerhouse woman with a skunk hair stripe going down her afro or Jerry curl mohawk, and it's got white stripes. Skunk, we call him skunk. We call her Skunk Lady. And literally, I was just like, okay. And then she shows up at the airport, picks her up, and then he takes her to the hotel. And it's like, at this point, you're like, man, it's weird because they kept telling us the time and the date. You're like, it is funny. It's like, are we going to be quizzed on this? How many times they keep telling us this time, Friday, 7 a.m., Friday, 9:30 a.m.
I like that kind. You know what? That's a stupid, cheesy kind of thing to do. But I admit, I kind of like it.
Yes.
And I'll say right here, as you're talking about when you're getting on a plane here, I got to bring this up. So obviously, this is a super low budget movie, so you understand that you're going to have these long shots, these padding shots, these time fillers and all that. My favorite scene, honestly, is what happens after he shoots the guy. Because what happens? Well, what do you do if you're a woman? You run. And does she like fall and hurt her ankle? No. But then the most 80s things ever, and again, this is before Patrick Swayze cemented the reputation of this happening all the time. She goes into a little pit stop diner, a bar, if you will. And R.O.T.O.R manages to find her. She's like, oh, this is like the one scene of Terminator or whatever. And so she's trying to run from him. And really, he's just a guy. Like I always joke about Commando, Bennett being in a chainmail vest when it's really just yarn. And everyone always calls me out on that on Twitter. And I'm like, that's okay. I get the joke, but let's just live the joke. He's in this, advanced, futuristic suit, but really it's just like a leather jacket. And he walks real blocky. So this is like they didn't film it slow, but it's half speed how slow they're going, because these three dudes come in and they're acting like they're gonna do the go in order one at a time, ninja style, to fight him, right? So the first guy gets bitch slap, then the other guy, and he's a white dude, and he does the whole karate thing super slow. It is so pathetically bad, but it's still the 80s. They still brought out the kung fu. And of course, they got the super jack guy there who rips his shirt off and flexes and tries to lift him up, and then gets back slapped twice. Well, no, I'm sorry. And I'm going to be very specific here for everybody listening, because there's a definite difference. There's the pimp slap, and then there's the backhand, or the bitch slap. So they're used for different reasons, but he gets both of them, and then a punch, which obviously hit his nose, and then that's when she ends up. And in the 80s is probably one of the last decades where you could actually enjoy flying. The stewardesses are nice, and it was cool, and everybody had a good time, and there's lots of cigarette smoking and alcohol and all that. Because in the 80s movies, another 80s thing, you would have these scenes of going up and purchasing the really long ticket, and then going, oh, is there anything else I can do for you? Oh, hold on just a minute. yes, I think I can make that work for you. Have a great flight, and you like. So I liked how they did all this here because you're like, oh, is there going to be a shootout here in the airport or what the hell's going to happen? So it's got a lot of 80s shit
Yeah.
going on in it.
So the crazy thing about this movie, it's the only reason everything is all it's happening because two chauvinistic, misogynist pigs. We got the guy Shoe Boogie, who's never been identified to this day, is who the actor is. He's the one. Once you go red, you'll never want to leave bed. He's hit on the girl. This guy is like, he's like, I'm Cherokee. You want to know? It's like, and she's like, dude, just leave me alone, you perverts.
Swolls the
Sex.
roll and size is the prize, baby.
So, because he's the one, because he set his Walkman down.
His
And
Sony Walkman, not a knockoff, ladies and gentlemen.
yes, it's Sony Walkman. It causes electric spark that travels through the computer and activates rotor. And then you also got the woman who's being chased. Her fiance is also what causes her to be in trouble because he excessive speeds. That's what causes the robot to pull him over. So it's like, man,
the skunk girl was actually not unattractive. It's just a really bad haircut.
Jane Smith.
It's just.
Do you know what other movie?
The other one's got the turtleneck, which it's you get a +1 for me if you can rock a turtleneck to some degree.
So you know what her other movie
and
was?
then they're fighting in the water with more karate in the background.
Yes. She's like Cynthia Rothrock on steroids.
Yeah, but not nearly as skilled.
So her other movie, other than this, was Flash Gordon Meets the Cosmic Cheerleaders. Her character was Mary Turd. This was 1990. I'm gonna have to do a future watching of that. It at least has a 3.7 compared to the 2.7 here. But
the scene where I'm sorry, the big fight here with the skunk girl, where she's fighting and she gets beat up, and then he jumps up and he gets her in a bear hug, right?
Yeah.
And then she looks and she sticks her fingers in it. She rips his chest apart before he crushes her to death. And this is why the ladies are trying to escape. And I just effing hit me who the guy looks like. If you guys know William Capp from The Greatest American Hero, that's who this guy looks like. I couldn't remember it, but I mean, damn it, that's who he reminds me of. That's lost on all you young people, but trust me, it's a legit reference.
Isn't the actor supposed to be I'm trying to remember what his name was in here. They don't really say his.
I don't know, but he's wearing the same pair of jeans in every scene.
Was it Hultailing? That's what else maybe. Anyway, like they never really identified him in here. I'd have to do some deep research on the internet, and just to figure out what it is. But so when you see the vision for the robot, when he's looking in his vision, it's basically like you ever go and look at a camera and you go into like negative filter.
Yep.
That's basically what he's doing. That's all.
Yes.
Like it's so low budget. Yep. I love it. Yeah, like I said, it is just a fun movie. It's just like the Miami Connection has a higher rating on IMDb than this.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I was like,
a big part of Miami Connection down here in Central Florida, Orlando specifically, is that with YK Kim, and there was actual legitimate kind of obviously Orlando was very quiet, sleepy town. We could talk about Disney and Universal and everything else there too, but old Florida, which doesn't quite exist anymore unless you're up in the Panhandle. Down here, you had a lot of people that came over from Vietnam. You had a lot of different ethnicities, even though it was quiet and sleepy, and it just was starting to grow. But YK Kim was literally like next door to the Scientology building here in Orlando, in Central Florida. I swear to God, because it was an out branch of I think St. Petersburg, which of course is like the capital of all that stuff. So Florida Man stuff existed back then, but you had like this upswelling of, hey, we're going to be getting into motion pictures. And in the late 80s, there was the idea of Orlando was getting to be big. What was it going to turn into? And that's when the push for the Orlando Magic came up, because they were already working on a name. Pat Williams was already here in town. There's a lot of nice local sports legends that would go on and play professional sports from my old high school and from UCF and other places here in town. So there was this exuberance that you have when everything is new or going to start happening, and a big part of that was to push Orlando to be, hey, we've got Disney, we've got Universal Studios that's going to be coming, we've got all this stuff. Let's become a film mecca. Let's be Hollywood East, is what it was known. And of course, Thunder in Paradise with Hulk Hogan was filmed here, and a bunch of other stuff, and movies in the 80s definitely were being filmed here a lot. So it was one of those things where it was fun at the time. And so I think, people didn't mind if there was schlock like this being put out there, like with Miami Connection or anything else that we've talked that's really an underground film. because it's there's an honesty to it, I guess, even though if it comes across as weird, but it's you have so few of those films that you can go like, oh yeah, I remember this place on the UCF campus, or I remember this place at the record store where I would go, or that. And this movie does capture that, even though it's not, of course, a Central Florida movie, but it feels like you said so super low budget. It's like, how the fuck did this get made?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. It's just this.
Money.
Uh,
That's
so
always the answer.
so apparently Baker was the robot. Some guy named was like Baker was a killer robot. Wow. Anyway. So yeah, this was Margaret Trigg plays the girl in distress. She's the cute girl. I'm not sure what else she did after this, but yeah, it just was just one of those movies that was made for riff tracks, made for Mystery Science Theater 3000. I don't see how you could be like actually serious. Oh, the other thing too, I forgot about that because the one scientist in here, he says like, "What do you think this is? A bad science fiction movie?" So right there,
Well,
I bet you they purposely made it bad to see how bad they can make it because I don't think this ever went to theaters. I'd be shocked if it did.
well, here's the thing. This would be the perfect movie for what we do call the midnight movies. You might see a decent one, then a crappy one after it or something. It's not. It really is perfect for that. So again, back then that was definitely a cultural thing too, not just with Rocky Horror and everything, but
Yeah.
this would definitely find an audience. And as you've mentioned before, when we talk about getting into the '90s and the DVD craze, VHS is becoming wildly more popular and accessible. So this could find legs. And you go, hey man, it's not the Terminator, and it's not Judge Dredd, and it's not this, that's not that, but it's kind of like it all. It's just super cheesy, low budget. You'd be like, yeah, that sounds cool. I want to go see it. And again, it's hard to say today that there's movies like this, but I will say this for its strongest suit. Even though it's a bad movie, it's entertainingly bad. It doesn't piss you off in stupidity. It just, you know what you're getting, and it tries to just be that and nothing else, so it's not pretending. But honestly, the best thing about this movie I thought that helped was its score. It's not a great one, but it's got
So
a synthy 80s kind of thing to it, which works.
So if you're looking for this movie on Blu-ray, it was released in 2016 by Shout Factory. You can watch it.
Yes.
That, but the double feature was
Yes.
Millennium. Was the other film?
Yeah. Now, from this movie, we've done Miami Connection. We've done, of course, Cocaine Bear, which people think's a laugh, right, and other stuff. This movie, I still think is pretty entertaining. It's definitely worth a watch. And if you're in the right mood for just something awful that's not going to upset you, you watch this. You'll be better for it, I think. Um, but yeah, I think it's a great representation of the kind of stuff that's out there. But like I told you at the beginning, I don't recall this. And when I started watching, I'm like, yeah, I've seen this. Oh yeah, I think I remember this chick, but I don't remember where it played, where I saw it. Uh, it was just weird. Like my mind blocked it out. Like Popcorn is another movie because it has one of the greatest taglines in all of movie history: "Buy a bag, go home in a box." But it's a horrible movie that I'm afraid to do here on the Extreme Movie Show because I hated it. It might be different now, but this movie's not bad. It's entertaining. I'll say
So
that.
MK, this isn't the Millennium TV show I was talking about. I was talking about Chris Christopherson. I think his name is. That was the Millennium movie.
Yeah, Lance Henriksen, Millennium TV show. That's been on my permanent short
Yeah.
list. I'm working up some political capital with Professor Pixel. So after we
He's
do that,
greasing. He's
we
greasing
might hit
Pixel's
Servant, then we
palms.
might hit Millennium. No, Millennium to me is better than X Files.
I know, but I'm
I
saying
like X Files. I do.
like you said, behind the scenes, you've been greasing Pixel. You've been warming them up, getting them ready for it.
Servant is so outrageous. We might do that next because right now, obviously, we're doing Wayward Pines. We just did episode 2 on that too. Yeah. So, guys, ladies and gentlemen, Rotor, R.O.T.O.R. 1984, 87, 88, whatever. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong because of where you're looking at it from, depending on where you guys are at. This is on Tubi and also YouTube.
Yeah. I watched it on Tubi TV. They only had was the rip tracks. It is available through, I believe, 123 Movies if you want to pirate, really, if you want to. Otherwise, I'm sure it's on YouTube as well.
Yeah.
But and it's also available for purchase. I'm not sure if it's on Prime or anything like that. It might be on Prime. But like I said, these movies, if you can find them, sometimes they're so rare you can't find them anywhere really. If you find them anywhere, they're in the pirate, so it just sucks because they should be like in a list of like a group of 30 movies you buy in DVD or case, like the worst movies of the 80s. That's what I want. The worst sci-fi. Like,
Well, we've talked about here early on a couple years ago on the Extreme Movie Show the Meg test because the Meg was a big budget movie with Jason Statham and a bunch of
yeah,
other people, and it was pretty horrible to me. And I call it the Meg test. Well, is it better or worse than the Meg? Because the Meg's really not a good film, and so by all standards, this is probably a worse film. But I will tell you what, this film to me is more entertaining than say the Meg. The Meg is trash. You watch it once and be like, "What the fuck? Come on, people! At least try." Right?
yeah.
And here, even though it's super low budget, to your point, and I think you at the beginning mentioning the vast amount of credits this guy has, this just wasn't a one-off wannabe kind of guy. He had spent a lot of time and effort doing stuff. He knew that it was a ripoff and a hybrid of stuff. So what? It works. It does capture the spirit of the '80s. It has a lot of '80s cliche things in there too. It's only pretty much missing members only jacket and some front boob shots. Other than that, I mean, it checks all the boxes for an extreme '80s movie. That's my final take, sir. What's yours?
All I want to know is where do I find the songs that are in this movie? They're kind of generic, but they're 80s though. Kind of like they were just throwaways, I guess.
You had a lot of that in some of these, especially later '80s type movies and all that. Where you're like, yeah, this sounds good, and you're like, I have no idea who the hell this is.
Yeah.
But then you
Well,
still have to
yeah.
appreciate it because the '90s would take a dark turn shortly.
Yeah, so this was through distributed originally through Imperial Entertainment. I don't know if they're defunct now, whatever it's called.
Probably.
Yeah,
Probably.
but you can get them on Columbia. That's the other one is they were releasing it too. RCA Columbia. That's
Yeah.
that's what originally that they did that for releasing a home video. But
And if Shout Factory releases it on Blu-ray, that means it's definitely got enough of a cult following, whether you automatically see a film because it's a cult one or not. But honestly, when very rarely do we actually look at lists for what's coming up. We might say, oh, let's do a spring preview or a fall or a Halloween one just because of themes. But
oh,
really, when you talk about '80s movies that people forgot, this is definitely up there on that list.
so I want to point out this now. I realize what this movie was made for. It was to advertise the 1986 Impulse, which is a sporty three-door liftback coupe, which is manufactured by Isuzu in 1981 to 1992.
MK's mentioning in chat, I spit on your grave, and I'm wondering if we've covered that because obviously I've seen it.
I haven't, but I'm sure.
I've absolutely I've seen it, MK.
Yeah.
I've seen
Yeah.
most of that stuff. I tend to go more towards the little horror and some of that stuff. So we pick and choose, certain ones like that to come up with because of our taste, how it lies into it. So like I know upcoming will probably be given strong consideration to the Russell Crowe movie where it's like an exorcism kind of thing. I just pop every time I see him. As goofy as it looks, I want to cover that. Obviously, we've got our Commander yearly review coming up for Father's Day. We've got our Mother's Day, movie mommies ones where we talk about hot moms and movies. That's Mother's Day, of course. We'll probably be doing a spring or really probably more of a summer preview soon as well. But yeah, obviously we Professor Pix and I won't doing the TV stuff. We had a great time doing. Dark Shadows, the revival from early '90s, and we did that. And now we're starting Wayward Pines after that. Again, it could be Servant. We may do Millennium. That's a big commitment, but that's something Pixel would want to have to be in. But that's strong. Obviously, we'd love to do X Files. We've done Kolchak. We've done a lot of stuff. So it's just a different mindset here. But movies like this, oh my God, you do feel like you're in the theater in the '80s. I swear to God, 10, 11 o'clock at night, and this thing's coming on and all
Yeah,
that.
I was gonna say, I feel like you're
It's a
watching
great
late
feeling.
night TV in USA.
Perfect movie for it. I'm serious. It's just you put this on and another bad one. Like if you're in the mood for that stuff, this is definitely something that can fill in some space. I find it hard to just watch one really bad movie. I'm in the mood. I'm like, I want to keep this streak going or whatever.
So
Then you
yeah,
pass out watching.
I want to continue with Cyborg and Lady Terminator.
Oh
The
man,
trifecta.
oh man. I know the John Wick movie's coming out and everybody's got a boner for that. Unlike me, but we may review that as well. Hopefully it'll be the last one.
Oh, and everybody's wondering what the motorcycle he was riding in this, the R.O.T.O.R. He's riding a Yamaha.
Yeah, Japan thought it was going to be taking over the world in the '80s, and you saw it in a lot of products here. But then
We had Yamaha dealer here too, and then they went under. Man,
yeah. Well, I mean, they were starting to go through financially what they did in the '80s by printing massively. So that's why they've had almost no growth, and their demographics don't support it. And so a lot of the big name brands, especially with quality, since we've been offshoring, made their way to the States. And that's when people went, "God damn it, you got to buy American." Everyone's like, "Oh shit,
Yamaha was
better.
everywhere.
This is better quality and cheaper, so I'm going to buy that." And the DeLorean's the big example of that kind of sort of from Back to the Future. That's more of a rib though. But Japan was going to take over in the '80s, and then they didn't.
They were taking our stuff, they took our cars and they were taking stuff. They're making it better. That's sucks because we went to cheap steel. Anyway, but as far as Yamaha, I remember Yamaha was being like ski-doos and all that stuff.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So they're huge. Into like the late '90s, but 2000s, I think that's when they finally went under. Right around when, was it right around during Obama was in president, or was it before?
A
I
little
can't
bit
remember.
before.
It might have been right before. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lady, yeah. You saw Lady Turner MK. You know what I'm talking about.
Lady Turner. Okay, seen it. That's good. All right. Anything else you need to plug before we call it a night?
Just don't jaywalk. You never know who's gonna pull you over.
Never ever travel more than 5 miles over the
And
speed limit if a
always carry a
machine
Desert
guy
Eagle.
driving behind you. What's that?
Always carry a Desert Eagle.
Remember, weightlifting's not just for guys; it's for girls as well. And fog machines, buy them when they're on discount and keep them running while you're filming. You know what? That's what we'll do when we start actually doing live videos. We'll step
And if a cop pulls you over, shoots your fiance in the head, don't drive away and then stop and try to like pull over and try to talk it out with him.
This beast is not human. You cannot reason with it. You can only hope to contain him.
He is not man's best friend.
Another great Lane Hendricks vehicle, MK. Check that one out and our review. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening here on the Xtreme Movie Show. Sunday nights to be determined. We've got a few suggestions. It's a short list. Be looking forward for that. Our next Bond movie is going to be coming up here soon with Professor Pixel in a couple weeks. So, of course, we just got done doing For Your Eyes Only, so it'll be the next one after that, and that'll be a hoot and a holler, or maybe it won't. But yeah, that and Wayward Pines, and then what we've got Sunday and Tuesday. I'm really looking forward to that. Looking forward to you guys showing up as well. Have a good night. As always, remember, stay extreme.
I'll be back.